Hi, I'm Bill Vanderpool with the Douglas County Conservation District, and I'm very pleased to announce our 2016 Conservationists of the Year, and that is Linda and Terry Browneller.
This was my grandparents' and great-grandparents' property, and we're actually 5 generations now on it. When they passed away, we basically inherited this property and wanted to do something to help the land, help the forest, and increase our pasture as well. NRCS was able to help us with that, as well as Bruce Benninghoff, our local forester.
Yeah, so it's impressive from the conservation district's perspective to have a landowner using a wide variety of conservation practices, as Linda mentioned, for fire mitigation projects and corral and pasture rotation and cross fencing, weed management. Yeah, so Linda, maybe you could tell us a little bit about where we are within Douglas County and some of the other elements of the property in relationship to the location.
We are in the south end of Douglas County along the Front Range. We had 17 acres that we addressed with the forest project. We have 44 acres that is total.
So we ask you, where do you want to fight fire? Over here or over there? What we've done here is 2 things, basically. We have reduced the fuel on the property by removing products which are going to be saw logs and firewood. So we came in and masticated, which is done with a machine. It has a horizontal drum with teeth on it, and it chews up the slash. Here we have some typical masticated material, and as you can see, this is not the same kind of material you end up with when you chip. Chipping will produce thinner chunks like this, and they'll lay like shingles on the ground, creating an impervious layer. But here we have chunks, we have bigger chunks, stringy stuff, and it's varied. Here's just good old-fashioned duff material that's going to decompose rapidly and create organic matter in the top layer of the soil. We don't have a deep layer. Right there is your mineral soil right there. And it allows the grasses, oak brush, dogbane, daisies, all kinds of other grasses and forbs to pop right up through this stuff. What we have here is a skidding winch that fits on the 3-point hitch on the back of a tractor. They come in different sizes. You match the size of the winch with the horsepower and the size of the tractor. What we use this for is moving the logs out of the woods.
And I'm glad we purchased it, because it is a back saver, and there's no way you would be able to accomplish something like this without equipment like this.
One of the objectives we have here is to reduce the continuity of fuels. It's a wide open space here, which serves as a great fuel break. We thin the trees on the side to make sure that it would remain effective as a fuel break. This is wide enough to prevent crown fire from crossing this fuel break under all but the most extreme conditions.
One of our objectives with the Conservancy project is to enhance the wildlife environment. While we were working on our forestry project, there are several dead trees around, and we wanted to make sure not to cut those so that they are considered wildlife trees. The birds use them.
What we wanted to point out is that this is an area that the birds nest in. Only woodpeckers can get after the bark beetle. before treatment, we had, counting all the species, all sizes of stems, 900 trees per acre. That's including the oak brush. We had ponderosa pine, Douglas fir, some white fir, and a lot of gamble oak. So part of the objective then was to bring the species mix back in line with what would have been here had fire been able to play its natural role in the forest, which is to keep things thinned out and the fuel volume reduced.
I'd like to introduce Clark Harshbarger, who is a soil scientist with the NRCS, and Clark can tell us a little bit about some of the soil aspects of the project here.
One of the objectives of the landowner was to increase forage for livestock grazing, and so by opening up the canopy of these trees, they were allowing some of these successional species to come in and increase a lot of more forageable biomass. And you can see that's been achieved. Another objective that's covered when you do that is you actually increase the stability and you reduce the possibilities for erosion to occur by having nice thick rooted mats of dense plant roots growing. And you can also see that they're leaving plenty of organic residue on top that's able to also increase or decrease the ability for erosion to occur.
On the southern end of our property, my grandparents had a gravel pit that they provided gravel for the Douglas County roads. When it was our turn to see what we could do with this, Bruce had an idea about how biochar might enhance this soil over here. All of the plots had seed and slash from the trees. The first plot over here has only seed and slash, and it basically looks the same as our control areas. This one over here behind Terry had slash seed and composted manure. The biochar plots are up behind us, and one of them has biochar and compost on it as well as the seed and slash. The other just has the biochar. We kept the horses off of it for 2 years. We had such growth that this spring, we were able to put the horses out on it for their short rotation. What I have noticed is that the biochar plots, the grasses are about waist high. And the biggest improvement is the ground cover. It's filling in on all this gravel.
This site here was a reclamation experiment, and we were looking, the landowner was looking at some different amendments to see if we could start to build up some organic matter into the soil to start to stabilize the site to get it revegetated. And so we have 4 different treatment. The one that doesn't have any amendments has the least amount of biomass and has the shortest plant height. The one with just the manure has a little bit more biomass but doesn't really have the same vigor and green color. You can see here the plants are taller, at least the vegetative is taller on this one. And then the one with both amendments is the greenest of the 4, and it has the most biomass. So there's a clear benefit to reclamating your soils with a larger portion of the organic matter fraction.
So we got really interested in the biochar and the results and all the research that's been done saying that it could increase your productivity. To make biochar, you have to heat up the product, whatever organic product you have, and not use oxygen, so it's not burning. In my mind, I think of it as kind of like baking. Good biochar sounds like kind of like glass crunching, and it doesn't leave much residue on your hand. It decomposes very, very slowly over 1,000 years, so it's super good to get nutrients back into the soil. It filters some of the bad stuff out of the environment. And if you look at it under a microscope, it's created almost a honeycomb appearance, which holds water.
Right. So another conservation practice which we would like to highlight is your use of rotational grazing and cross fencing to manage your rangeland. I'd like to tell us a little bit about that. It'd be really interesting.
Well, we found out that we were way overgrazing. We had lots of weeds and invasive species, and we have more animals than we ever had before on this property. So with the help of the NRCS guys, we set up a plan to break our 3 large pastures into 17. So we put approximately 3 miles worth of fencing up and have implemented the rotations of the horses through that. So they hit it once in the spring for a very short time, and then a little longer later in the summer, and then they're off of it about 300 days a year. The grass is thickened up, the varieties are changing, it's pushing out some of the weeds, and it is definitely noticeable. So it's been really cool to see, and it was only 3 years. With all the pasture rotation, we also had to think about water for the critters. So we've changed some water line stuff, added some tanks, and we're pretty close to having what we want.
And Linda and Terry, we'd like to hear a little bit more about some of the history of the ranch and some of the objectives of your grandparents and their experience.
My grandfather was born on the property in 1909, and they ran cattle. They did that until about in the early 70s, and then the prices dropped and things changed. So while they were running cattle on the land, it had a certain look. It kept some of the weeds out, it kept the oak brush out. When they sold the cattle, things started to change. Even though we wanted to help them, it just didn't get done like it needed to get done. But with the help of NRCS again, and Bruce and Terry and my daughter, they put in so much time with the forest, with the reclamation project, with the biochar, a tremendous amount of time. I think if my grandparents were here now, they'd be grinning all over the place. They'd be really proud of what we've done and how it's changed.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to show and see all of the conservation practices that you all have implemented. So on behalf of the Douglas County Conservation District, we really want to thank you and appreciate your efforts in conservation, and we've had a great time coming out here to see it all. So thank you, Bruce. Terry, thank you very much. Linda, thank you very much.